Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the surprisingly complex mind of an owl, perched high in an ancient oak tree, gripping the branch a little too tightly as he contemplates whether his very first hoot of the evening will meet everyone's intellectual expectations. You probably couldn't handle their level of overthinking. Imagine if every time you spoke, the entire forest expected profound wisdom to pour forth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, I'd love to hear in the comments what your pets might overthink about. Does your cat worry about being judged for knocking things off tables? Does your dog stress about whether their tail-wagging enthusiasm is too much? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey through one anxious creature's mind. You shift your weight from one taloned foot to the other, feeling the rough bark through your grip as the last traces of sunset fade behind the tree line. The pressure is already building in your chest, that peculiar tightness that comes every single evening when you realize it's almost time for your first vocalization. The mice below are probably already gathering, you think, their tiny ears perked up, waiting for whatever pearls of wisdom might float down from your branch. You can practically hear their whispered expectations. Shh, the owl's about to speak. He'll probably say something about the meaning of life, or the optimal foraging patterns for winter preparation. Your large eyes, magnificent orbs that can capture the faintest starlight, scan the forest floor nervously. Evolution gave you these incredible optical instruments, capable of seeing a mouse twitch its whiskers from 50 yards away in near total darkness. What evolution didn't give you was a comprehensive understanding of philosophy, economics, or really anything beyond that looks edible, and that tree seems sturdy. Yet here you are, expected to be some kind of feathered oracle. The truth is, you woke up about 17 minutes ago with the same thought that plagues you every evening. What if tonight is the night everyone realizes you're just winging it? And yes, you're aware of the irony in that phrase. You've been literally winging it your whole life, gliding silently through the darkness on feathers designed for stealth. Zoologists have documented that your flight is nearly soundless thanks to the soft, fringed edges of your primary feathers, a fact that somehow makes everyone assume you must be contemplating deep truths up there in the silence, when really, you're usually just thinking about whether that was a vole or a particularly plump leaf. You clear your throat softly, a barely audible clicking sound, practicing for the main event. Should you go with a classic, or perhaps a more thoughtful? The pause might suggest contemplation, like you're really weighing the universe's mysteries between hoots. You remember last Tuesday when a young rabbit asked you about the purpose of existence right after your evening call, and you just stared at him with what he interpreted as wise silence, but was actually complete panic. The first stars are emerging now, and with them comes the familiar anxiety about your reputation. Somewhere along the line, probably thanks to some ancient Greek who never actually met an owl, your entire species got branded as wise. You'd like to meet this person and explain that just because you can rotate your head 270 degrees doesn't mean you have a 360-degree view on life's big questions. A small beetle crawls along your branch, and you watch it with the kind of intense focus that others mistake for deep thought. Really, you're just debating whether it's worth the effort to eat something so crunchy. This is the kind of decision-making that actually occupies most of your mental energy. Snack or no snack? Hunt now or wait 20 minutes? Yet if any woodland creature saw you staring at this beetle, they'd probably assume you were contemplating the nature of existence itself. You ruffle your feathers, a self-soothing behavior that momentarily makes you feel more put together. The action reminds you that at least you look the part. Those facial discs that funnel sound to your ears give you that scholarly appearance, like you're perpetually wearing an old-fashioned, powdered wig. It's false advertising, really. Those discs are just for pinpointing the exact location of a scurrying mouse, not for looking distinguished at forest gatherings. The moment is approaching. You can feel it in the way the darkness has fully settled, in the rustling of small creatures below, beginning their nightly routines. They're all waiting for you to signal that the night has officially begun, and more importantly, they're waiting for that signal to somehow contain wisdom. You take a deep breath, your chest puffing out slightly, and prepare to release your first hoot into the expectant silence of the forest. There, you've done it. The sound carries through the forest, and you immediately start analyzing whether the pause between the first and second hoot was too long. Did it sound contemplative or just hesitant? Below, you hear a field mouse whisper to her children, "Listen carefully, little ones." The owl's evening call often contains hidden lessons about patience and timing. Your stomach does a small flip. You were literally just trying to remember if you'd hooted already or if that was yesterday. The worst part about everyone assuming you have multiple advanced degrees is that you can barely remember completing what your mother generously called the basic flight school. Those early lessons consisted mainly of don't hit trees and mice run fast, so dive faster. There was nothing about metaphysics or solving territorial disputes between squirrels. Yet here you are, with every creature from here to the meadow, assuming you've got the equivalent of a doctorate in woodland wisdom with a minor in existential philosophy. A raccoon waddles into view below, and you watch him pause, looking up at your tree expectantly. You know what's coming before he even opens his mouth. "Oh, wise owl," he begins, and you resist the urge to pellet right then and there. "I've been thinking about the nature of ownership. Is the garbage can truly the human's, or does it become mine once they've discarded its contents?" You stare at him, your eyes unblinking, not because you're pondering his question, but because that's literally how your eyes work. You don't have the mobile eyelids that would let you express confusion or skepticism. This fixed, wide-eyed stare just reinforces everyone's belief that you're deeply considering all angles of his garbage-related philosophical query. You offer, hoping he'll interpret it however he needs to and move along. He nods sagely, as if you've just delivered the wisdom of ages, and waddles off, muttering about the transient nature of possession. You didn't even mean to hoot. It just came out as a sort of verbal placeholder, while your brain scrambled for something actually helpful to say. The truth is, your educational background is embarrassingly simple. You learned to fly, eventually, after several humiliating crashes into low-hanging branches that your siblings still bring up at family roosts. You mastered the art of silent flight, though mastered might be generous, considering you still occasionally misjudge a landing and have to play it off like you meant to grasp that particular twig. Your mother taught you to identify edible prey from definitely not edible prey, a curriculum that was basically mouse good, skunk bad, learn from experience. But somehow, everyone expects you to be some kind of forest professor. The squirrels think you understand complex mathematics because you can calculate the trajectory needed to catch a running vole. What they don't realize is that this is pure instinct, hardwired into your brain by millions of years of evolution. You're not solving equations up here. You're just following the same basic programming that tells you movement plus small size equals potential dinner. Scientists have actually studied this. Your species' brain-to-body ratio is quite average for a bird. Not exceptional like the corvids who actually do solve puzzles and use tools. But try explaining that to a deer who's looking up at you with those huge, expectant eyes, asking about the best way to navigate seasonal changes in foliage availability. You want to tell her that your expertise extends to leaves fall down, mice easier to see, hunting gets better, but that would shatter the illusion. You shift positions on your branch, and even this simple movement seems to carry weight with your audience. A passing bat squeaks, the owl grows restless. Perhaps he's contemplating whether comfort and wisdom are mutually exclusive. No, you think you just have a talon cramp from gripping this branch while pretending to know things. But you maintain your silence, which the bat probably interprets as a profound statement about the value of non-verbal communication. The impostor syndrome sits heavy in your chest, heavier than the largest rat you've ever caught. Every night brings new questions you can't answer, new expectations you can't meet. Last week, an anxious rabbit asked you about the meaning of courage, and you almost laughed, which would have sounded like a shriek and probably traumatized the poor thing. Courage? You're a predator, afraid of your own reputation. You hunt in darkness not because it's poetic, but because it's practical. And yet everyone thinks you're making some kind of statement about finding light within shadow or some such nonsense. Your head swivels, 180 degrees to the left, then back to center, a movement that never fails to impress onlookers. Such surveillance, a chipmunk chirps to his friend. Always watching, always learning. If only they knew you're usually just checking for actual threats or potential meals, not gathering wisdom from all directions. This neck flexibility is about survival, not scholarship. But try telling that to creatures who've already decided you're basically a feathered library. You contemplate letting out another hoot, maybe stringing together a whole series that sounds intentional and meaningful. But what if someone asks you to translate? What if they want to know what specific wisdom you were imparting? The pressure of being perpetually presumed profound weighs on you like wet feathers after an unexpected rainstorm. A field mouse emerges from the underbrush, and your heart rate quickens. Not from hunting instinct, but from recognition. This is Margaret, the mouse who last month asked you about optimal food storage techniques for surviving winter, and you'd responded with what you thought was a thoughtful silence, but was actually you trying to remember if mice even survive winter, or if new ones just appear in spring. She's back, and the way she's purposefully approaching your tree suggests she has another question that you absolutely won't know how to answer. "Excuse me, owl," she squeaks, her tiny voice carrying surprising authority. "I need to know about the migratory patterns of hawks. When exactly will they leave for the season? I have 3 litters to plan." You feel your facial discs involuntarily flatten against your head, a stress response that she probably interprets as intense concentration. The truth is, your knowledge about hawks extends to exactly 2 facts. They hunt during the day, when you're asleep, and their competition for the same prey. Everything else is just hoping they go away eventually. Your mind races through your actual areas of expertise, and it's devastatingly short. You know where voles tend to hide during each season: under the snow in winter, in tall grass during summer, near fallen logs in autumn. You know the specific rustle that means rodent versus wind versus larger predator you should avoid. You know that hunting is better on cloudy nights because prey animals feel falsely secure in the dimness. But Margaret isn't asking about any of that. She wants hawk migration schedules like you've got some kind of aerial traffic control system up here. You begin, then pause, hoping she'll fill in the blanks herself. Sometimes, if you wait long enough, the askers answer their own questions, and thank you for guiding them to the truth. It's become your primary survival strategy, not for catching food, but for maintaining your reputation. Unfortunately, Margaret just stands there, whiskers twitching expectantly, waiting for real information. You've noticed this happening more and more lately. The woodland creatures seem to think you have access to some vast database of knowledge, like those glowing rectangles humans stare at. They assume that sitting up high gives you not just a better view, but somehow omniscient understanding of everything from weather patterns to philosophical truths. If only they knew that your elevated perspective mainly reveals where the fattest pigeons roost and which meadow has the most active rodent population. The hawks you finally manage, your voice carrying what you hope sounds like gravitas rather than uncertainty, follow patterns beyond simple prediction. This is technically true. You have no idea what patterns hawks follow. Margaret nods enthusiastically, apparently finding meaning in your meaninglessness. Should I plan for early November or late October? She presses. Your talons grip the branch tighter. How did you become the forest's supposed Google when your search history would just be where vole hide repeated thousands of times? The scientific community has documented that owls have excellent memory for hunting grounds and prey locations, a fact that somehow got twisted into you having excellent memory for everything. Yes, you can remember that the Hollow Oak 3 territories over had a family of mice last spring, but ask you about which berries are safe for rabbits to eat, and you're completely lost. Your brain is specialized, evolved for specific tasks, not for general woodland encyclopedia duties. A moth flutters past, and you track it automatically with your eyes, the movement so smooth it looks deliberate and thoughtful. Margaret gasps softly. Are you indicating I should pay attention to insect behavior for clues? No, you just got distracted by potential food, but you can't say that. So you remain silent, which she takes as confirmation, scurrying off to observe moths with an intensity that makes you feel even more fraudulent. This is your nightly crisis, the gap between what you actually know and what everyone thinks you know grows wider with each interaction. You're like a specialist doctor constantly asked about completely unrelated fields. Imagine if everyone expected a heart surgeon to also know about agricultural science and theoretical physics just because they went to medical school. That's your life, except your medical school was learning not to fly into solid objects and remembering where you caught that particularly juicy rat last Tuesday. Your mother never prepared you for this. Her lessons were practical. How to spot movement in darkness, how to fly without making sound, how to cough up pellets discreetly. There was no course on managing unrealistic expectations from prey, species, or how to appear wise when you're really just hungry. She did teach you to observe before acting, but that was about hunting strategy, not life philosophy. Yet every time you pause before swooping down on prey, someone interprets it as deep contemplation about the circle of life. Another mouse appears, Margaret's cousin probably, and whispers urgently about whether the unusual number of acorns this year signals a harsh winter ahead. You want to screech that you're an owl, not a meteorologist. Your idea of weather prediction is, clouds mean darker hunting, and rain makes everything annoyingly wet. But instead, you tilt your head exactly 45 degrees, a movement that means nothing but always seems to satisfy questioners. The mouse interprets this as prepare but don't panic, and rushes off to spread your wisdom. The knowledge you do possess feels so inadequate compared to expectations. You know that voles prefer dense ground cover, that shrews taste terrible despite looking delicious, and that the best hunting happens 2 hours after sunset when nocturnal prey feels safest. This is useful information for an owl, but try explaining to a worried squirrel that your expertise doesn't extend to nut market forecasting or optimal burial depths for winter storage. The moon has risen higher now, and with its ascent comes the gnawing reminder that tomorrow night is the monthly Parliament gathering. Your chest feathers ruffle involuntarily at the thought. Every full moon, all the owls in the region convene at the Great Hollow, a massive dead oak that's become the traditional meeting place for what everyone else assumes is a scholarly symposium. But what you've come to dread as your monthly dose of performance anxiety. You've been rehearsing potential contributions in your head for the past week, each one sounding more inadequate than the last. The vole population seems stable, doesn't quite measure up to the great horned owl's discourse on territorial boundary ethics from last month. Or worse, that barn owl who somehow connected hunting patterns to broader economic theories about resource distribution. You had nodded along, making thoughtful hooting sounds, while internally screaming that you just wanted to catch mice, not understand their socio-economic impact on the ecosystem. The term Parliament of Owls itself makes your anxiety spike. Collective nouns for animals are supposed to be poetic, but this one carries the weight of governmental expectation. A murder of crows sounds dramatic, but doesn't imply they need to pass legislation. A gaggle of geese suggests pleasant chaos, not intellectual discourse. But a parliament? That suggests debate, wisdom, careful deliberation, all things you're supposedly equipped for, but actually find terrifying. Your neighbor, a distinguished barred owl named Reginald, glides onto a nearby branch. Preparing your thoughts for tomorrow, he asks, and you realize you've been staring into middle distance for the past 10 minutes, which he probably interprets as deep preparation. The theme is nocturnal perspectives on diurnal problems. Fascinating topic. Your stomach drops. You don't even fully understand the title. You know nocturnal means night and diurnal means day, but perspectives on problems? Your only day-related problem is that you're asleep during it. You respond non-committally, which Reginald takes as agreement. I knew you'd have insights, he continues. Your position here at the crossroads gives you such a unique vantage point for observing the intersection of various species challenges. Intersection? Crossroads? You chose this tree because it had a good hollow for nesting and plenty of mice nearby. Any metaphorical significance is entirely accidental, but try explaining that to Reginald, who's already launched into his planned talking points about something called temporal habitat segregation. The worst part about Parliament isn't just the expectation to contribute, it's the way other owls seem so naturally equipped for it. That spotted owl from the Northern Grove always arrives with what sounds like prepared statements about forest management. The snowy owl who visits from up north somehow relates everything to climate patterns and adaptation strategies. Meanwhile, you spent last week trying to remember if you'd already eaten or if that was just a very vivid dream about eating. You remember your first Parliament 3 years ago when you'd innocently thought it would be about practical matters, maybe sharing good hunting spots or warning about human activity. Instead, you'd sat through 4 hours of discussions about the philosophical implications of crepuscular versus purely nocturnal hunting schedules. When they'd finally called on you, you'd panicked and shared that dead mice were easier to spot after lawn mowing, which led to a 40-minute discourse on human-wildlife interface dynamics that you definitely hadn't intended to inspire. Zoologists who study owl behavior note that most species are actually quite solitary, coming together only for mating or in areas with abundant food sources. Nothing in the scientific literature mentions intellectual salons or wisdom-sharing circles. Yet here your regional parliament has evolved or devolved, depending on your perspective, into exactly that. You suspect it started as a simple gathering and somehow escalated into competitive philosophizing, but you're too anxious to suggest maybe going back to basics. Your turn at Parliament follows a strict perching order based on age and supposed wisdom. As a 6-year-old owl, you're right in that awkward middle zone, too old to claim youthful ignorance, too young to pull off enigmatic elder silence. The great grey owl, who's nearly 15, can just sit there, looking ancient, and everyone assumes his silence contains universes of meaning. You tried that once and got asked if you were feeling ill. I'm particularly excited to hear your observations, Reginald continues, apparently unaware of your internal spiral. Last month, when you mentioned the correlation between moonlight intensity and hunting success, it really made me reconsider my whole approach. You blink slowly, trying to remember saying anything that's sophisticated. You vaguely recall mentioning it was easier to see when the moon was bright, which apparently got transformed in Reginald's memory into something far more profound. The pressure builds in your chest like a pellet that won't come up. Tomorrow night, you'll have to fly to the Great Hollow, find your designated perch, and somehow contribute something that sounds wise rather than just observational. The other owls will nod thoughtfully at whatever you say, analyzing it for deeper meaning you definitely didn't intend. Someone will probably build on your accidental insights, creating elaborate theories from your simple statements about preferring to hunt when it's not raining. You've considered faking illness, but owls rarely get sick, and claiming sudden onset feather molt would be suspicious. Plus, absence gets noted and discussed, probably spawning theories about what wisdom you're contemplating in solitude. It's easier to show up and mumble something about wind patterns affecting prey behavior, letting others extrapolate meaning while you quietly panic on your perch. Reginald finally glides away, leaving you alone with your reflection in the small pond below. The moonlight catches your face, and there they are, those enormous eyes that everyone finds so meaningful. You've caught your reflection enough times to know what others see. 2 golden orbs that take up roughly 60% of your facial real estate, fixed in what appears to be perpetual contemplation, but is actually just the default setting for able to see mouse from very far away. The thing about owl eyes that most creatures don't realize is that they're not built for wisdom. They're built for murder. Well, hunting, but murder sounds more honest about what you actually do versus what everyone thinks you do. These eyes can't even move in their sockets. Humans assumed this fixed gaze meant deep thought, But really, it just means you have to turn your whole head to look at anything, which admittedly does make you seem very deliberate and thoughtful when you're actually just trying to see if that's a leaf or a snack. A young raccoon passes below and glances up, immediately doing that thing everyone does, widening his own eyes as if trying to match yours, then nodding respectfully. "Evening, Professor," he mumbles, and you want to shriek that you're not a professor, you're just hyper-focused on whether that movement near his left paw is edible. But the eyes have already done their work. To him, you look like you're contemplating the universe when you're really just dilating your pupils to maximize light intake. The cruel irony is that these magnificent optical instruments that everyone finds so wise-looking actually indicate the opposite of what they assume. Large eyes relative to body size in the animal kingdom usually means one thing: you need to see in the dark to avoid being eaten or to eat others. It's not about pondering life's mysteries, it's about spotting that mouse before it spots you. But try explaining that when you're sitting there with what essentially amounts to 2 feathered telescopes strapped to your face. Scientists have determined that owl eyes are so large they're not even spherical. They're elongated tubes held in place by bony structures called sclerotic rings. This is fascinating from an evolutionary standpoint and completely unhelpful when a squirrel asks why you're staring at him so intently. You want to explain that you're not judging his nut-burying technique. Your eyes just literally cannot look anywhere else without turning your entire head, which would probably seem even more judgmental. You remember the first time you realized how your appearance affected others' perceptions. You were a young owlet, barely out of the nest, practicing your perching. A passing rabbit had frozen, then bowed slightly, murmuring something about young wisdom and an old soul in fledgling feathers. You'd been confused. You were literally just trying not to fall off the branch while figuring out how to blink properly. But those eyes, even in youth, apparently screamed scholar rather than scared kid trying to figure out basic coordination. The spectacles comparison haunts you particularly. Some well-meaning human once said, "Owls look like they're wearing glasses." And now, every creature with poor vision thinks you must understand their struggle. A nearsighted mole last week spent 20 minutes explaining his difficulty navigating above ground, clearly expecting empathy and advice. You wanted to tell him your vision problems are the opposite. You can see a mouse twitch from 40 yards away, but can't focus on anything closer than a few feet. Those spectacular eyes are far-sighted to an almost comic degree. You're basically wearing permanent reading glasses in reverse, but everyone thinks you've got perfect vision at all distances. A bat flutters past, using echolocation to navigate, and you feel a pang of envy. No one expects bats to be wise just because they can see with sound. Their sensory adaptation is viewed as exactly what it is, a hunting tool. But your visual adaptation somehow got tangled up with intelligence, as if the ability to spot a vole in near darkness translates to understanding complex philosophical concepts. Your head swivels to track a moth, the movement slow and smooth, and you catch a glimpse of two mice below, freezing to watch. "See how he surveys his domain," one whispers. "Always observing, always learning." You're literally just following a potential snack, but the head movement, combined with those eyes, apparently looks like you're taking in all of existence and finding it wanting. The moth escapes while you're distracted by your own self-consciousness, which feels like a metaphor for something, but you're too frustrated to figure out what. The weight of those eyes grows heavier as the night deepens. Each blink, which you have to do completely because owls can't do partial blinks, seems to carry significance to observers. A slow blink gets interpreted as patient wisdom. A rapid series of blinks means you're processing complex thoughts. The truth is, you just got dust in your eye from that moth's wings, but the forest has already decided you're having a profound moment. You've considered whether other owls struggle with this same stereotype, but bringing it up seems impossible. What would you say at Parliament? Does anyone else feel burdened by their facial structure? That'll probably launch another philosophical discussion about the relationship between form and expectation, missing your point entirely. Plus, that screech owl with the particularly prominent ear tufts would probably make it about himself, turning it into a discussion about how looking demonic affects his social interactions. A rustling from the oak tree 2 territories over makes your chest tighten with a familiar dread. That's Beatrice's nest, and those sounds mean her 3 owlets are awake and active. She's been dropping hints for weeks about bringing them by for an audience with the wise owl, and you've been pretending not to understand, hooting vaguely whenever she brings it up. But you know your luck is running out. Soon, 3 pairs of enormous young eyes will be staring up at you, expecting life lessons you absolutely don't possess. The mentoring expectation might be the cruelest burden of all. Adult creatures assuming you're wise is one thing. They've already formed their worldviews and just want validation. But young ones? They're actually looking for guidance, real direction that could shape their entire lives. Last month, a teenage owl asked you about finding his purpose, and you'd frozen so completely he thought you were demonstrating the power of stillness. He left talking about meditation when really you were having a full panic attack. You hear Beatrice's distinctive call. She's definitely preparing to bring them over. Your mind races through possible excuses. Sudden molt, urgent pellet situation, emergency parliament preparation. Each sounds flimsier than the last. The truth is, you can barely manage your own life, let alone guide 3 impressionable owlets through theirs. Just last week, you spent an entire night convinced the sun wasn't coming back because of that human time-changing ritual that makes sunset happen an hour earlier. How can you teach anyone about life's mysteries when daylight savings time remains utterly incomprehensible to you. The worst part is remembering your own mentor, a genuinely wise old owl named Augustus, who actually did know things. He'd taught you practical skills, how to spot the slight movement that distinguishes a living mouse from a wind-blown leaf, how to calculate drop angles for different wind conditions, which trees made the best roosts. But he'd also had answers for bigger questions, or at least he'd seemed to. When you'd asked why owls hunted at night, he'd given you a beautiful explanation about finding your place in the ecosystem's temporal niche. You would just say, because that's when the mice come out, and probably traumatize some poor owlet with your lack of poetry. There it is, Beatrice's announcement that she's bringing the family over. You can hear the excited chittering of young voices, probably arguing about who gets to ask the first question. Your pellet from 2 nights ago suddenly feels like it's reforming in your stomach. What if they ask about death, or purpose, or why their father never returned from migration? You're equipped to teach them exactly one thing: how to catch and eat small mammals. Somehow, you doubt that's what Beatrice has in mind. You watch them approach through the branches, 3 fluffy owlets trying to fly with dignity, while occasionally forgetting how wings work. The youngest one face plants into a branch, recovers, and looks around to see if anyone noticed. You pretend you didn't, though your spectacular vision made it impossible to miss. They settle on nearby branches, and 6 enormous eyes turn to you expectantly. The silence stretches, heavy with their anticipation and your dread. "Children," Beatrice says warmly, "this is the owl I've told you about. He sits at the crossroads of 4 territories and sees all. You want to correct her, you see mice and the occasional lost possum. Not all." But the owlets are already leaning forward with reverence. The middle one, slightly larger than his siblings, clears his throat importantly. "Sir, how do we know when we're ready to establish our own territory?" The question hits you like a poorly aimed dive at prey. How do you know? You still don't feel ready for your own territory, and you've been here 3 years. You picked this spot because another owl died, and it was available, not through some profound self-knowledge about readiness. But 3 pairs of eyes wait for wisdom, so you do what you always do: turn it back on them. "What makes you think about readiness?" you ask, hoping to buy time. "Well," the owlet continues earnestly, "Mother says we need to understand ourselves before we can understand our place in the forest." Oh, good. Philosophical parent homework. You nod slowly, which the owlets interpret as approval rather than the stalling tactic it is. Understanding, you begin, then pause dramatically because pauses always seem to work, comes from observation. This is technically true. You understand that mice run toward dark spaces when frightened from observing it hundreds of times. Whether that applies to self-knowledge is anybody's guess. Scientists have documented that young owls actually learn primarily through practice and play, developing their hunting skills through trial and error rather than formal instruction. But try explaining to Beatrice that her owlets would learn more from missing a few dozen mice than from anything you could tell them. She wants wisdom passed down, ancient knowledge transferred, not go crash into things until you figure out flying. The smallest owlet, who's been vibrating with barely contained energy, finally bursts out, "Why do we eat mice when they're so cute?" The middle one hisses at her to be respectful. But honestly, it's the first question you might actually be able to answer. "We eat mice," you say carefully, "because that's how we fit into the world. Every creature has its role. You want to add, and ours is eating cute things, but that seems harsh for young ears." "But how do you know what your role is?" the older one presses. And you're right back in philosophical territory. Your role, as far as you understand it, is to be a flying mouse disposal service who occasionally makes hooting sounds. But these owlets want purpose, meaning, a grand design where everyone has a destiny beyond eat, sleep, make more owls, repeat. The owlets are still staring at you, waiting for an answer about finding one's role, when a gray squirrel comes racing through the canopy with the kind of urgency that makes your hunting instincts twitch before you remember you're in the middle of an impromptu philosophy class. "Owl? Thank goodness you're available." She's breathless, tail bristled with anxiety. "Emergency Forest Council meeting tomorrow about the disputed oak grove between the red squirrels and the chipmunks. We need your judgment." Your hollow feeling of dread somehow hollows out even further, like a nesting doll of anxiety. The owlet's eyes grow even wider, if that's physically possible, clearly impressed that you're needed for such important matters. Beatrice preens with pride. "You see, children, this is why we listen to our elders. Such wisdom is called upon to solve the most complex disputes." The squirrel continues, apparently unaware she's just made your mentoring session exponentially worse. The red squirrels claim ancestral rights going back 12 seasons, but the chipmunks have documentation, well, organized nut piles that they say prove prior claim. Plus, there's the whole issue with the jays who want nesting privileges but won't commit to year-round residency. She pauses, looking at you expectantly. "We'll need your ruling by tomorrow night." You manage what you hope sounds like a thoughtful rather than the screech of panic trying to escape your throat. Territorial disputes? Documentation in the form of nut piles? You can barely remember which tree you stored that half-eaten mouse in last week, and they want you to adjudicate property law? Your understanding of territory extends to, "I hunt here, you hunt there, everyone stays fed." This sounds like they need an actual lawyer, not a bird who gets confused by property lines. "Will you share your wisdom on justice with us first?" The smallest owlet pipes up, clearly seeing an educational opportunity. The squirrel's eyes light up. "Oh yes, a preview of your judicial philosophy would help us prepare our arguments." And now, you're somehow supposed to have a judicial philosophy. You didn't even know that was a thing owls were supposed to have. Your philosophy on justice is roughly, "If you steal my kill, I'll be mildly annoyed, but probably too lazy to do anything about it." The Forest Council meetings are a relatively new development, started about 2 years ago when someone decided that various territorial spats needed formal resolution rather than the traditional method of whoever screams loudest wins. You'd been appointed as a judge because you rarely scream about anything, which everyone interpreted as judicial temperament rather than what it actually is, a general state of bewilderment that renders you mostly speechless. The key to justice, you begin, watching 5 pairs of eyes lean in eagerly, is your mind goes completely blank. What is the key to justice? Is there a key? Why a key metaphor anyway? Do keys even exist in nature? You pivot desperately, listening to all sides. There. That sounds judgy. The squirrel nods vigorously, apparently taking mental notes. But how do you weigh competing claims? She presses. The chipmunks have physical evidence, but the red squirrels have oral tradition. You want to ask why they can't just share the oak grove, but apparently that was proposed at the last meeting and led to what the squirrel describes as an acorn-throwing incident that we don't talk about. The complexity of woodland politics makes your head hurt. When did simple forest life become so complicated? When did squirrels start keeping records? Why do jays need permits for part-time nesting? Your mother never mentioned any of this in owl preparation school. The middle owlet raises a wing. Does justice mean everyone gets what they want or what they deserve? This 6-week-old bird just asked a question that human philosophers have debated for millennia, and he's looking at you like you definitely have the answer. Beatrice beams with maternal pride at her offspring's intellectual curiosity while you silently curse whatever cosmic force decided owls should be considered wise. Tomorrow's council will explore exactly that question. You deflect, hoping to buy yourself 12 hours to figure out what justice even means in the context of nut storage rights. The squirrel seems satisfied with this non-answer and scampers off to inform the parties of your forthcoming wisdom. You watch her go with the same feeling you get watching a particularly fast mouse escape, a mixture of failure and relief. The truth is, you've judged exactly 3 disputes in your council career, and each time, you've basically waited until someone suggested a compromise and then hooted approvingly. There was the Great Berry Bush incident, where you wisely suggested alternating picking days, mostly because a rabbit mentioned it quietly and you repeated it louder. Then came the stream access debate, resolved when you asked, what would happen if everyone just drank quickly, which somehow got interpreted as a profound statement about resource consumption. Beatrice gathers her owlets, who are now buzzing with excitement about witnessing real wisdom in action. Tomorrow, if you're very quiet, you may observe the council from a distance, she tells them. Your anxiety spikes even higher. Not only do you have to pretend to understand property law, but you'll have an audience of impressionable young minds watching you fail at it. The oldest owlet looks at you with something approaching hero worship. Will you use precedent or natural law as your framework, he asks. You blink slowly, which he takes as approval of his question, rather than complete incomprehension. Both have their place, you manage, which is technically true, since you don't understand either. The owlets nod sagely, and Beatrice herds them away with promises that they can discuss the finer points of jurisprudence after tomorrow's ruling. You watch them go, the smallest one attempting to fly with the grave dignity of a future judge and failing spectacularly, which feels like a metaphor for your entire existence. Alone again on your branch, you practice a simple hunting call, just a basic to signal your presence to potential prey who might foolishly reveal their positions. But even this simple vocalization carries weight you never intended. From 2 trees over, you hear a young rabbit tell his sister, "Listen, the owl asks who, because identity is the fundamental question of existence." You want to screech that you're literally just making noise to see if anyone squeaks back, but that would definitely ruin your reputation as a contemplative philosopher of the forest. The who interpretation might be the most frustrating misunderstanding of all. Your species call, that distinctive or sometimes evolved for incredibly practical reasons. Zoologists understand it's about territory marking and mate location, but somehow the English-speaking world decided you were asking existential questions. Every time you vocalize, someone thinks you're pondering identity, questioning the nature of self, or investigating the deeper meaning of individual existence in a collective ecosystem. Last spring, you made the mistake of calling repeatedly during mating season, a purely biological imperative that had nothing to do with philosophy. But a passing deer heard your increasingly desperate hoo, and spent the next 20 minutes explaining her own identity crisis, how she wasn't sure if she was defined by her role as a mother or her individual desires to explore beyond the meadow. You sat there, hormonal and frustrated, while she worked through what she called the owl's essential question that you hadn't even meant to ask. The worst part is that now you're self-conscious about every vocalization. A simple territorial call to warn off that pushy barn owl from the north becomes a philosophical inquiry in everyone else's ears. Who has the right to this space? A scholarly raccoon interpreted last week. Who decides boundaries? Who are we when stripped of our territories? You just wanted the barn owl to know this tree was taken, not inspire a seminar on property philosophy and identity politics. You let out a frustrated chirp, a sound owls make when annoyed, and immediately regret it as a passing possum pauses. "The owl speaks in tongues tonight," he murmurs to his offspring. Sometimes wisdom comes in forms we don't immediately recognize. It was literally just air escaping wrong because you're stressed. But now it's apparently glossolalia, speaking in mystical languages. You can't even express frustration without it being interpreted as some sort of shamanic practice. The irony is that owls have one of the most varied vocabularies in the bird world. You can hiss, screech, whistle, chirp, chatter, and produce at least 12 distinct variations of each with specific meaning. But instead of recognizing this as a complex communication system evolved for survival, everyone's decided each sound must contain layers of meaning about existence itself. Your alarm shriek means large predator approaching, not, behold, I shall now demonstrate the primal scream of existential dread. But try telling that to the field mice who scattered while shouting about the owl's performance art. A bat flies by using his echolocation clicks, and you feel that familiar envy again. Nobody interprets his ultrasonic navigation as questions about the nature of reality. He clicks, sound bounces back, he avoids trees. Simple, functional, no philosophy degree required. But you make one sound, and suddenly everyone's debating whether you mean who are you, or who am I, or who are any of us really in this vast cosmos. You remember the incident that really drove home how badly your calls get misinterpreted. During a particularly clear night last autumn, you'd been working on triangulating a vole's position using sequential calls from different angles, a sophisticated hunting technique that requires precise acoustic spacing. To the vole, it should have sounded like impending doom. To the assembly of creatures who'd gathered below, it apparently sounded like a Socratic dialogue where you are playing all the parts. Notice how he varies the tonal quality, a presumptuous crow had explained to the gathering. First questioning, then answering himself, then questioning the answer. Brilliant demonstration of dialectical thinking. You were literally just trying to make the vole think there were multiple predators so it would panic and run into the open. But the crow's interpretation spread, and now everyone expects your calls to contain that level of philosophical complexity. The pressure extends to your silent moments too. Sometimes you don't call because you've simply forgotten what you were going to say. A normal lapse that happens to every creature. But when the wise owl goes quiet, he's contemplating something too profound for words, a squirrel whispered last night when you'd paused mid-hoot because you thought you saw a really fat moth. When the owl chooses silence over speech, we must examine what question is too deep to voice. You've tried varying your calls to seem less philosophical, shorter, more abrupt, clearly functional. But that just led to theories about your minimalist period and how you were stripping wisdom down to its essential components. A field mouse wrote what she called poetry about it, comparing your brief hoots to haiku, each one a complete universe of meaning in a single sound. You were literally just tired and didn't feel like extending the call, but apparently that's artistic brilliance. Tonight, you need to call again, purely practical, marking your territory before the council meeting tomorrow, so no opportunistic owl tries to claim your spot while you're away dealing with squirrel litigation. But you hesitate, knowing that whatever sound you make will be analyzed, interpreted, and assigned meaning you never intended. Maybe a simple but that might sound dismissive. A longer too questioning might inspire another identity crisis in some passing mammal. The sound of raucous cawing from the eastern grove makes your stomach twist with a familiar cocktail of inadequacy and embarrassment. That's the crow family's territory, the corvids who actually deserve their reputation for intelligence. You've watched them solving puzzles, using tools, and demonstrating genuine problem-solving abilities that make your supposed wisdom look like the sham it is. They're basically the honest students of the forest, while you're the one who got promoted based on looking studious. Just last week, you observed the youngest crow figuring out how to use a stick to extract grubs from a fallen log. An actual tool. Meanwhile, you still sometimes forget which foot you're supposed to land with first, and end up in an undignified scramble of talons and wounded pride. The crows have been documented by scientists dropping nuts onto roads for cars to crack, understanding water displacement, and recognizing human faces. Your biggest intellectual achievement this month was remembering that the white mice from the pet store escapee colony taste weird and should be avoided. The thing that really stings is that nobody expects the crows to be wise. They expect them to be clever, which they are. There's a difference between wisdom and intelligence that seems lost on everyone when it comes to owls. The crows get to be smart without the burden of being sage. They can solve their little puzzles and play their pranks without anyone asking them about the meaning of life or expecting them to judge territorial disputes. They're the forest's engineers and comedians, not its unwilling philosophers. An elephant matriarch's trumpeting carries faintly from the distant preserve, and your sense of fraudulence deepens. Now, there's an animal with actual wisdom, decades of accumulated knowledge, genuine memory of drought patterns and water sources, complex social understanding that helps her guide her herd through difficulties. Elephants mourn their dead, recognize bones of their relatives, and pass down survival knowledge through generations. You sometimes forget whether you caught that mouse yesterday or if that was last Tuesday. You've heard the stories about elephants remembering humans who helped them decades ago, about matriarchs leading their families to water sources their own grandmothers showed them in youth. That's real wisdom, practical, tested, vital knowledge accumulated over a lifetime and shared for survival. Your wisdom consists mainly of knowing that mice are more active on cloudy nights and that it's harder to hunt during a full moon because prey can see you coming. Useful for an owl, sure, but hardly the profound insights everyone expects. The dolphins in the coastal waters 5 territories over are another source of intellectual intimidation. They have names for each other, actual signature whistles that function as individual identifiers. They teach their young to use sponges as tools to protect their beaks while foraging. They play, genuinely play, in ways that suggest complex cognition and emotional intelligence. You played once, batting at a dead leaf, and felt so self-conscious about someone seeing you being frivolous that you pretended to be demonstrating hunting techniques to invisible owlets. Even the supposedly simple creatures outclass you in their specialized intelligence. Bees communicate exact locations through dance, encoding distance and direction in movement. Basically, GPS through interpretive dance. Ants farm fungus and build ventilation systems into their colonies that would make architects weep. And here you are, getting credit for being wise because you have big eyes and make sounds that coincidentally rhyme with who in English. The morning before last, a crow had actually tried to make conversation with you. Real conversation, not the reverent wisdom-seeking you usually endure. "Nice hunting lately?" he'd asked casually, and you'd frozen, so unused to normal interaction that you defaulted to your mysterious wise owl act out of pure social anxiety. He'd shrugged and flown off to join his murder. And why do they get such a cool collective noun while maintaining zero pretensions about their nature? Probably telling the others that owls are stuck up rather than just cripplingly insecure. You think about the octopuses in the tide pools beyond the forest, creatures whose distributed intelligence lets them solve problems with 8 arms that can think independently. They change color for camouflage and communication, escape from seemingly impossible spaces, and show individual personalities that suggest rich inner lives. Your only color change is getting slightly paler when you're stressed, which isn't even voluntary, and definitely isn't communication unless "I'm anxious" counts as a message. The parrots south of here are another reminder of your intellectual mediocrity. They use human language, actually understanding and appropriating another species' communication system for their own purposes. Sure, they mostly use it to demand crackers and curse creatively, but that's still more linguistic ability than you've managed. You can't even master the subtle differences in mouse squeaks that might tell you whether they're genuinely terrified or just startled. A familiar chittering draws your attention, the red squirrel who's involved in tomorrow's territorial dispute. She's busy burying acorns with the kind of spatial memory that scientists have proven rivals some primates. Squirrels can remember hundreds of cache locations using complex mental maps and landmarks. You frequently forget where you are in your own territory and have to orient yourself by the position of the moss on trees, like some kind of feathered compass that only points to confused. The truth is, when scientists actually test animal intelligence, owls don't even make the top 10. Corvids, great apes, elephants, dolphins, pigs, all demonstrate more cognitive ability than your supposedly wise species. You're basically coasting on appearance and mythology, while actually intelligent animals get on with solving real problems without the pressure of being considered philosophical authorities. The moon has reached its zenith, casting silver light through the canopy in a way that would be poetic if you weren't so exhausted from a night of feeling inadequate. You've been sitting on this branch for hours, cycling through every anxious thought about tomorrow's council meeting, next month's parliament, and the endless expectations that press down on you heavier than the largest prey you've ever carried. And then, somewhere in the spiral of comparing yourself to actually intelligent creatures, a different thought surfaces, quiet at first, like a mouse in thick grass. What if everyone already knows? The possibility hits you with the gentle force of flying into a window you didn't see. Stunning, but not quite devastating. What if the forest creatures aren't actually fooled by your big eyes and solemn hooting? What if they come to you not because they think you have answers, but because they need someone to listen while they work through their own thoughts? The mouse earlier didn't really wait for your hawk migration expertise. She'd scurried off to observe moths, creating her own solution from your non-answer. You think back through recent interactions with this new lens. The rabbit with the identity crisis who talked to you during mating season, did she actually need your input? Or did she just need space to voice her concerns to someone who wouldn't interrupt? The raccoon with garbage philosophy hadn't waited for your profound response. He'd nodded at your simple and drawn his own conclusions. Maybe your reputation isn't built on wisdom, but on something else entirely: availability and the appearance of patience. A gentle breeze ruffles your feathers, and you realize you've been holding tension in your shoulders for so long that relaxing them feels foreign. The thought continues to unfold like your wings when you're deciding whether to hunt or just stretch. Perhaps wisdom isn't about knowing everything. Maybe it's about being present while others figure things out for themselves. Your mother never claimed to have all the answers either. Now that you think about it, she just listened to your owlet concerns and made thoughtful sounds until you felt better. The forest suddenly seems less demanding from this perspective. Yes, creatures look to you for something, but maybe that something isn't encyclopedic knowledge or profound philosophical insights. Maybe it's just the reliable presence of someone who appears to be listening. And you do listen, if only because you're trying to figure out what response they expect. Your anxiety about not knowing enough has kept you quiet, which others interpret as patience. Your confusion has made you ask clarifying questions, which seems wise, but is really just you trying to understand what they're talking about. An elderly mouse emerges from the underbrush, Theodore, who's been around longer than most prey animals manage. He settles on an exposed root below your tree with the careful movements of age. "Can't sleep either?" he asks, and there's something knowing in his tone that makes you wonder. The full moon before council meetings does that. You look down at him, those supposedly wise eyes probably just looking tired in the moonlight. "You know," Theodore continues, cleaning his whiskers thoughtfully, "my grandfather used to say the wisest creature he knew was a rabbit who always answered questions with questions. Turned out, she was partially deaf and genuinely didn't hear half of what was asked." He chuckles, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "But her questions made everyone think harder than any answer would have." You stare at Theodore, wondering if this elderly mouse, prey, technically, though you're too emotionally overwhelmed to consider hunting, has just revealed something profound. "Are you saying—" you begin, then trail off, not sure how to finish the question. He shrugs, a tiny movement that somehow carries enormous weight. "I'm saying maybe wisdom isn't about having answers. Maybe it's about helping others find their own." The relief that washes through you is so intense, it's almost physical, like finally coughing up a pellet that's been stuck. All this time, you've been terrified of being exposed as ignorant, but what if that's not what anyone expects? What if your role isn't to be the forest's encyclopedia, but simply its sounding board? The creatures who come to you with problems often leave with solutions you didn't provide. The owlets learn more from watching you fumble through explanations than they would from perfect answers. The council meeting tomorrow, Theodore adds, stretching carefully. Nobody really expects you to have the perfect solution. They just need someone neutral to listen to all sides and ask the obvious questions everyone else is too invested to ask. He looks up at you with eyes that have seen many seasons. Why do you think they picked you? Not for your expertise in property law, surely. You want to ask how long he's known you're not actually wise. But the question seems pointless now. Maybe everyone knows. Maybe that's not the point. The barn owl with genuine intelligence doesn't get asked to mediate disputes because he's too eager to show off his knowledge. The clever crows would turn it into entertainment. But you, anxious, uncertain you, provide something else, a space for others to work through their problems while feeling heard. You say softly, and for once, you're not trying to sound wise or meaningful. It's just acknowledgement, just a sound that says, I hear you, without pretending to have solutions. Theodore nods as if you've said something profound, which makes you wonder if maybe you have, just not in the way you intended. Get some rest, he advises, beginning his careful journey back to his burrow. Tomorrow's council will sort itself out. They always do. As he disappears into the underbrush, you feel something shift in your chest. Not quite peace, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. You're not wise. You probably never will be in the way everyone assumes. But maybe that's not your job. Maybe your job is just to be here, eyes wide open, listening to the forest's anxieties and occasionally asking who, not as a philosophical inquiry, but as genuine curiosity about who needs to be heard. The weight that's been pressing on your shoulders all night begins to ease as the forest settles into its deepest quiet. You can feel the approach of dawn still hours away, that subtle shift in energy that prey animals haven't noticed yet, but your body recognizes. Your breathing has slowed without you forcing it, matching the rhythm of wind through leaves. The mouse's words echo gently. Wisdom isn't about having answers, and for the first time in your life, not knowing feels less like failure and more like honesty. The council meeting tomorrow no longer looms like a storm cloud. You'll go, you'll listen, you'll ask simple questions like, what do you really want, and have you considered sharing? Not because these questions are profound, but because sometimes the obvious needs saying. The creatures will interpret depth where you intend none, find meaning in your confusion, and somehow that will help them find their own solutions. Your eyes may be evolved for hunting, not wisdom, but they're very good at staying open while others work through their problems. Perhaps that's enough. Perhaps it's always been enough. The forest breathes around you, in and out, and you breathe with it, no longer trying to be its philosopher. Content now, to be just another creature finding your way through the darkness. You settle your feathers, tucking your head at just the right angle, and as your eyes slowly close, you can feel the gentle pull of sleep beginning to tug at your consciousness like a warm updraft, carrying you higher without effort. The symphony of night sounds continues around you, the distant rustle of a foraging hedgehog, the whisper of bat wings overhead, the settling of branches as the forest itself seems to exhale and relax into the remaining hours of darkness. Your talons loosen their grip ever so slightly, finding that perfect balance between security and rest, between holding on and letting go. Tomorrow will come with its council meetings and territorial disputes. Next month will bring another parliament where owls will share their observations, and you'll offer whatever simple truths occur to you. But right now, in this moment, none of that matters as much as the soft rise and fall of your chest feathers with each breath. The moonlight has shifted, painting different patterns through the leaves, and you've stopped trying to interpret what any of it means. Content instead to simply exist within the gentle flow of time, passing like a quiet stream. Your mind, usually so busy with worry about expectations and wisdom you don't possess, has found a still point, not empty but full of peaceful acceptance that you are exactly what you need to be. A creature of the night who listens, who watches, who occasionally offers a thoughtful into the darkness and lets others find their own meaning in the echo. The weight of those enormous eyes finally feels like nothing more than what they are: tools for seeing in the dark, gifts from evolution that help you navigate your world, no more inherently wise than the whiskers on that mouse, or the echolocation of the bats, or the antenna of the moths you sometimes chase. And that's perfectly, wonderfully, peacefully fine as your breathing deepens and slows, matching the ancient rhythm of the sleeping forest around you, until there's no difference between your breath and the wind, between your heartbeat and the pulse of life that flows through every branch and burrow, every nest and hollow in this vast, accepting darkness. That's the end for today. Sweet dreams.